Hello, everybody, poetry lovers, all of you. I know, it's so great to be here. So, I'm the granddaughter of Sicilian peasants. My maternal grandfather, Giuseppe Cardinale, would read an English dictionary at night, writing down words he hadn't seen before in a notebook. My paternal grandmother, Anna Raptosh, came here to the United States alone when she was only 16 from what's now Slovakia. I'm the daughter of a man who dropped out of high school, ran away from home, joined the Navy, and later got his GED. I'm the daughter of a first-generation Sicilian-American mother, and it's in no small part due to her that I became a poet. She's been a fantastic source of swatches of wisdom and offbeat sayings my whole life. So like my forebears, I work hard. But as poet Walt Whitman told us we should do, I like to lie in a hammock and loaf and invite my soul. In my inner worlds, I'm an outlaw, a hobo, a gypsy, an outlier at heart. I'm almost always at odds with the status quo, with the dominant culture that I'm also a part of. My brother, my sister, and I are the first in our family to receive a higher education. And so on that note, I'm going to read you a poem by the American poet Felix Stefanile. It's called The Catch. So here, you'll hear the Italian-American immigrant father talking to his son, and I identify very much with the son. The Catch. Your college learn you, be smart, talk fancy. They tell you, you go with the girls, talk fancy. You tell your mother, Ma, why you got the bun on your head? Old-fashioned. Your college learn you, don't respect your mother. Some college. Now you say, this girl, you live together, marriage never mind, old-fashioned. Your mother cry, and with the beads pray, pray, and pray. What you think, she asked me. You know what I think, boy? I think if you was a pig we raise by and by, we sell you for money now, not your mother cry. Well, thanks to my immigrant grandfather and my mother, I'm aware of the magic of language, of how it can transform our lives. So when my mother gives advice, I listen. So here's a gift from my mother to you. Some of her sayings. Polish your teeth with a dry washcloth. Drink only skin temperature water through a wide-mouthed glass with a straw. Never put anything into your mouth that's white. Well, I listened to her. I knew she was a store of wisdom from the old and the new country. And she's always had this kind of perfect pitch about the sounds around the world, around the words. I just talked to her on the phone a couple of days ago, and after I'd uttered about 7 syllables, she said, "What's wrong with you, Diane?" Instantly, she knew there was something wrong, and this is probably like your mom too. They know immediately. So under her influence, her amazing ear for tone, I have always had the sense that words are talismans to be taken seriously. Words really are supposed to mean something, and poetry is here to make sure that they do. And that's why I write it. Poetry retunes language into angles of truth. So along these lines, poetry can help us to script in the most genuine and kind terms what it might mean to be human, what it might mean to be a member of a family, of a community, of a nation, and of the world. The late, great Chilean poet Pablo Neruda said that the poet is at once a force for solitude and solidarity. And this is one of the best job descriptions I've ever heard for the poet. When I was a child in a somewhat loud family of 5, I loved to be alone. I hung out in my bedroom and read the Bobbsey Twins. I hung out in the sumac tree and listened to the leaves. In solitude, the poet unveils truth. In solidarity, the poet speaks them. In solidarity with Walt Whitman, I decided some time ago that I wanted to be Walt Whitman, the Walt Whitman of the 21st century. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but Whitman, you probably remember, never separated his poetry from his vision of American democracy. He tells us in Song of Myself that I am no stander above women and men or apart from them. And later in the poem he says, I give the sign of democracy. Through me, voices of the generations of prisoners and slaves. Through me, voices of sexes and lusts, voices veiled, and I remove the veil. Whitman's poetry acts as a necessary part of the world. His poetry removes the veil, gives voices to thieves, and speaks for those whose voices are silenced or veiled. These are among poetry's most important and lesser-known jobs. So how to become the new Walt Whitman? Well, I tried growing a beard. That didn't work. But like Whitman, I wanted to speak for the everyman, so I created an everyman character in my most recent book, American Amnesiac. I named him John Doe, and I gave him a big handlebar mustache. I decided he'd be my mouthpiece. So here's a little overview. John Doe, a white man in his 50s, wakes up one day on a bench in Civic Center Park in Denver with no memory of who he is or what his own country is about. And he finds on his arm a wristband with the name John Doe. He kind of likes that name, chooses it over his old one. And so the book is mostly a chance for him to meditate on some things, on, for example, what it means to be human, and what a great nation could really look like. So as he moves deeper on his journey within, he finds himself feeling almost painfully alive. And here he is musing about what it means just to be someone. The self is 1,000 localities like a small nation. Assembly required, borders and roads, armies, farms, small and large pieces of parchment. I stand by all the territories I've ever been, even as I can't remember them. I am a locum, ear to the emperor penguin, a banner ad blinking to the hoi polloi. Since I've become John Doe, I swear I can feel most objects with 60 digits instead of 5. A train moans from a far hummock, which reminds me that everyone I'll have to live without, I'll have to find a way to place within, which is an act of granite will, a strain, a ditty, an exercise in utmost futility. A few poems later, John Doe becomes bold enough to take issue with one of Ralph Waldo Emerson's most famous quotes. "We estimate a man by how much he remembers," says Emerson. In place of this, John Doe dishes out the following. "We remember a man by how much he esteems the we." In other words, John Doe has on his mind we the people, just like our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, did. And like Jefferson, John Doe thinks a lot about the stuff a nation is made of. One day, John Doe encounters the following fact. This morning, it was revealed that Jefferson initially referred to American people as subjects. Then in an 18th century version of search and replace, he swapped in citizens. Wow, what a difference a word makes. Would my grandfather have uprooted his large family from Sicily and come to the new land if the Declaration had promised they would be royal subjects here? Words mean things, and this might be too obvious even to say, but we live in an era when false-sounding terms and too easy slogans are sometimes used to disinform, to misinform, or dramatically oversimplify. And is anything more sacrosanct in America than the word freedom? Think of all the ways it gets misused, battered, and wrenched into its Orwellian opposites. A poet is somebody free, the poet June Jordan said. A poet is by nature a student of freedom. A poet knows that language can set us free. The sounds of the words can do that. Their music, their meaning, their mouthfeel. So it seemed natural to me to study what makes us unfree. Entirely natural for me to go to give poetry workshops in places like prisons. So let me break some silences for a moment here while I break down some numbers. This is some stuff you won't hear in the usual news cycles. Not long ago, a Pew Center report came out on what it called some really startling numbers, reminding us that over 2.3 million people in the United States, or 1 in every 99.1, is behind bars. If we were to count all the people in prisons and jails, as well as those under the supervision of probation or parole, we'd find 1 out of 30 Americans in jail, prison, or on probation or parole. Broken down further, 1 out of every 28 children in the United States has or has had a parent under penal supervision. Poets love statistics and facts. It's a very little known fact. Crime rates peaked in 1992, but incarceration rates have continued to soar. All right, so the land of the free is the global leader in the rate at which it imprisons its citizens. So let's see what John Doe has to say about some of this stuff. Cal's the one I used to call myself. He was me when I plumped for Goldman Sachs. I've made myself free of the home in his body, but where might I last? John Doe is a scope, a crypt, a safe with great legroom. America is a major term. It contains acre and cream, acme and ma, crime and me. Each of us helps corrupt our age. There are 200 times more inmates in this acme of acres than all the stars visible to the naked eye. I underlined this in green in a library book. I couldn't make myself stop. Marauding every man, take back his ink pens. His brothers love mustache wax, may contain flammables. So what kind of a country willfully breeds a permanent black undercast? Since when did greed wax into brass self-righteousness? And before I forget, will the White House live-in grandma get a chance to say her piece among the echo roses and the floribunda? Don't you love the sounds of the word floribunda? The poem's over. It rhymes. It rhymes almost with America. So I've inherited what might be described as the immigrant's naive optimism in America's endless possibilities, in its promise of justice for all. And like my grandfather, I know well the hard beauties of the English language. As a poet, I see myself as language's bodyguard. And in this role, I have to hold the country to its original written promises. So here's a line from that poem preamble that you all will recognize. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, I'm leaving some out, and secure the blessings of liberty, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States. Words don't just do things, they don't just say things, they do things. So let's listen to John Doe one last time, and he goes a little bit global. Here is my wedding ring. Here is a bouquet of vowels, anamika, spine of a possible decency, whose sounds yield great notions. The weight of one man's hand upon nation state, a way to sit still. May I come to know a bit about you for my files? Thank you very much.